Hello and welcome to the Warehouse 421 digital program. My name is Hassan Ajmani and today I'm going to be showing you two different techniques of bookbinding. First is the saddle stitch technique, which is very simple and very easy to start with, so this is ideal for beginners. And the second is a bit more advanced, which is the Coptic stitch. It's a little bit more complicated, but it's easy once you get the hang of it. Now, before we start, I'm just going to be showing you the different materials and tools that we're going to be working with. So first of all, you're going to need a cutter or an X-Acto knife. Either one is fine. You're also going to need a book owl. Now, this is a fancy tool to basically puncture holes in paper. If you don't have this, it's totally fine. What you can use is a bulletin board pen. This works just as fine. You're gonna need a pencil to mark your paper with. And this is another fancy tool that you can have. This is called a bone folder and it's used to basically crease your paper. And if you don't have this, it's fine. You can just use your fingernails, or sometimes I would use the back of a cutter and it works just as fine. You will also need some thread or twine or cord. Either one is fine. If you find that this is too thick, you can actually divide the individual strings into like a smaller cord. I would say don't go for the normal sewing thread because that could be too thin, but if that's all that you have, then you can combine several strings to make a thicker one. And lastly, you will need a block of beeswax. Now this can be hard to find, and if you don't have this, it's totally fine. You can still work with these techniques. The thing about beeswax is that it makes the string so much easier to work with and so much stronger as well when you tie it. As for the paper, first of all, I have some black Micron card. And this is very similar to cardboard, and it's a very thick piece, and it's very strong, and it's what's usually used for hardcovers of books. If you don't have this, it's fine. You can use any other material. You can even use leather or fabric or a thicker piece of paper or even some cardboard. If not, then you can completely skip this part and just go for a soft cover. As for the paper, I'm personally using some premium recycled sugar paper today, but you're free to choose any other kind of paper that you have. You can go for archival sketching paper, or you can even go for a printer paper. If that's all that you have, it's totally fine. It just depends on the usage of the book afterwards. An alternative thing that you can use for the paper is a drawing pad or a painting pad. So this is great because it comes with the paper. So this is the paper that you can use individually and then cut up for your sketchbook. And a bonus is that the back of these drawing pads have these thick cardboard pieces that you can actually use as the cover of your sketchbook. So this is great to use. And lastly, you need to have a cutting mat to cut your paper on. Almost forgot, you'll also need a ruler. Now, when it comes to cutting your paper, you just need to keep in mind that you'll be folding these papers in half. So whatever paper size that you have will actually be half the size. So this paper size is actually this big, and once we fold it over, we get this size. So today I'm going for 20 centimeters by 15 centimeters pages. And since I'm folding my paper in half, I'll just need to make sure that the width is double in size. So that's going to be 20 centimeters height by 30 centimeters width. And you can stack your papers while cutting them. Just make sure that they're correctly aligned. Otherwise, your pages will not be the same size. So now that we have all our paper cut up, let's start with the saddle stitch. So for this, I'm going to be using 2 sheets of paper. And the first thing that we need to do is align them and fold them in half. Okay. Corners, lay it down, press in the middle, and fold. Now you're going to notice that this fold is still pretty loose. So what I do is get my bone folder and then tightly crease that. So what you're going to end up with is a nice tight crease. And as you can see, the fold lays nice and flat. So it's not going to pop open. And when you open it, it also lays nicely flat. So now that I have my paper folded, next I'm gonna puncture my holes into the paper. So I'm gonna go for 5 holes. So what I'm gonna do is leave 2 centimeters from each edge and then just measure 4 additional centimeters between each point. So as you can see, I have 5 points here. And I'm gonna take my awl to puncture each of these holes. So this is how it should look like. Now I will go ahead and prepare my cord. So I'm going to be using some of this red color, and the length of the cord actually depends on your book. What I do is I would normally measure it twice and then maybe add another length just for the cord and for the knots. So next, if you have your beeswax block, you'll want to run your cord through that beeswax just to get it evenly covered with wax. And what this will do is that it will make your cord adhere much better to the knots, and it's not gonna slip or even cut your paper, and it's gonna be so much easier to work with. Because sometimes your cord or yarn is going to be too soft like this, and it's going to be impossible to put it through the needle, and sometimes it's very hard to get it through the paper as well. Right, so what I do here is that I would put it on my block, hold it firmly with my finger, and then just run it through. So next, I'm just going to put my cord through my needle. So this isn't gonna slip out. So that's what's good about our wax cord. So you can either have your knot outside or inside, but just for the sake of this tutorial, I'm just gonna put it on the outside so that it can show, or you can see clearly what I'm doing. So I'm gonna loop it through the first hole. And you wanna be gentle with your paper. I'm not gonna pull it out all the way. I'm gonna loop it back in. Now you don't want to pull your thread too tight because that can actually tear your paper. So you just want to make sure that it's nice and straight not too loose and not too tight. And then I'm just gonna loop it in and out through each hole. So now that we reached our final hole, what I'm gonna do is loop it back in and out so that the entire section will be threaded. So I'm basically going the opposite way of how I went earlier. Now that I've finished, I'm gonna tie the ends together. Just remember that we don't want this to be too tight. Before you do this, if you notice that your thread is too loose, you can go and individually pull the string until it's nice and straight. So I'm just gonna do 2 knots, and that's actually enough. And this is the beauty of working with wax thread, is that it can actually hold the knots. So you don't have to create like a huge knot in order to hold it tight. And that's basically it. This is the saddle stitch, and it's very, very simple to do once you get the hang of it. And what's beautiful about this is that your paper will lay flat. So this is great for sketchbooks. And this is how it looks like. I normally wouldn't go with too thick of a signature, just because it can sometimes lay weirdly when you fold it. But if you do have a lot of paper to work with and a lot of pages in your book, then the next technique is actually going to be very useful for you. And it's something that's very simple, very similar to what we did now, except that you're working with several signatures. Now, a signature is basically a bundle of papers folded together like this. So here I have 2 sheets of papers folded together. And if I add another bundle to that, so an additional 2 sheets of paper folded, now I'll have 2 signatures, and so on and so forth. So you can add however many that you like. And in each signature, I normally like to go for 2 sheets of paper, but you can go up to 4 sheets of paper if your paper is thin enough. If it's too thick, then I wouldn't recommend going with more than 2. So similar to the first technique, we will start by folding our sheets of paper into individual signatures. So again, fold it from the corners, right down the middle, and to the sides. And use your bone folder to crease it nicely. So that's one signature done. And this is actually how you can use the back of a cutter to crease your paper. So I go with a smooth edge. So you want to use the nice rounded edge for this rather than a sharper one, because that can actually tear your paper. So as you can see, I have 5 signatures now, and each signature has 8 pages. So there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. So next I want to be cutting my Micron card into the same size as my papers, except these will be individual sheets rather than a spread. So So I went ahead and cut up my Micron card into the same size as my paper. So once we have that, we can go ahead with puncturing our holes and stitching our sketchbook. So just like before, I'm gonna leave 2 centimeters from each side. So I'm doing this on the topmost signature only for now, and then I will mark the rest later on. So 2 centimeters from each side and then 4 centimeters between each hole. So now that I have my 5 marks, I will go ahead and mark the rest of my paper. Just make sure that they're all nicely aligned and straight. And I will just mark the rest. So now you can imagine where the thread is going to go and how it's going to look like. Similarly, I'm going to make the same marks on my Micron paper, Micron card, sorry, except that I'm going to put in 0.5 centimeters inside the card. So I'm just going to measure 5 millimeters, and then in a similar way add the same marks, 2 centimeters on each edge and 4 between each. Okay, so I'll do the same with my other one. So now that everything is marked, I can go ahead and puncture the holes using my owl. And similarly, I'm going to puncture the holes into the Micron card in the same marks that I had put on earlier, which are 5 millimeters from the edge. So now that everything is punctured, I can go ahead and prepare my cord. And this time you're gonna need a lot more cord, just because we're working with more signatures. So I'm gonna do 2 lengths for each signature. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10. And then I just like to give myself some extra cord to work with. And once more, I'm gonna run this through the beeswax. So next I'm gonna loop my cord into my needle, like so. So now I'm gonna take my first signature and my back cover, and then I'm gonna stitch these 2 together to start with. So first, I wanna tie the end of my cord. So this is gonna be slightly different than the saddle stitch. Okay, so here's my knot. I don't want it to be too big because this is gonna be inside my signature. So I don't want it to be too bumpy. So I'm gonna go through my first hole here. So once it's all the way through. So what we did with the saddle stitch is that we just went ahead and gone through the second and out the third. Except here, we're actually gonna go through our back cover. So just from the inside to the outside. Okay. So once it's aligned perfectly, we're gonna loop it back around. So this is what I'm doing. I'm just bringing it back, looping it around the piece of thread that I have here in between my signature and my cover. So just looping it in. And now they're firmly attached. Next, I'm gonna go back through my signature. So back into the same first hole. Just make sure that this is nice and tight. Not too tight, just like before, just firm enough. And then I'm gonna go through my second hole and into my cover. So you want to align your paper to the edge of the board rather than this way. And then similar to the first knot, we're gonna do it the same way. So go through it. And if this is easier, let me do it this way. So we go under and back around. So now we have our knots, and this is our second knot. So if you remember what we did with the first one, we just went back through the hole. Back through the same hole. So nice and tight. And then similar with the second hole that we did. Just gonna go through the back cover. And then we're just gonna repeat the same process. So behind this piece here, we're just gonna loop it. If it's easier, you can just do it from the back. Just gonna basically create a knot and then just pull it all the way. And there you have it. So I'm just gonna repeat the same process where I go inside the same hole, out of this hole here and into the back cover, create my knot, back again and out until I finish the rest of the holes. So now that I've finished my knots on all the holes, instead of going back in through the same signature, I'm actually gonna be adding my second signature at this point. So instead of going through the same signature, I'm gonna be going through the second one. So just like before, in and out. And I'm gonna be going out through the second hole. So next, we're gonna be looping the thread into the knot underneath, just to secure it. So I'm gonna be going under and over, just like so. So instead of going this way, I'm actually going the other way just because I'm moving downwards this time. So with each signature, your direction changes. Okay, so now that I have my knot, just like before, I'm gonna put it through the same hole. And I'm gonna carry on doing the same thing with the knots to the rest. So now that I'm at my last hole, I'm gonna do the same with the loop. And just like before, instead of going back through the same signature, I'm gonna be adding another signature. and so on and so forth until I finish the rest of my signatures. And then with the last one, I'm just gonna be adding the board on the other side. So now that we've reached our final signature, we're first gonna loop it into the cover, skipping the last signature. We're gonna loop it around the thread once. So that's nice and tight. And then we're gonna put it through the first hole of our last signature. Just like so. So, into the back cover first, and out of the back, loop it once and put it through your last signature. So we're gonna put it through our second hole and out. And similar to what we've done with the rest of the signatures, we're first gonna loop it to the signature underneath. Loop down first. Now instead of going back through the same signature, I'm actually gonna loop it into the cover first. And then create a knot from that. So a knot below and a knot above. And then we're gonna put it back through the last signature. And I'm gonna repeat the same with the remaining holes. So now that I've reached my final knot, just gonna make sure that it's nice and secure, and then put it through my final hole. And once I do that, I can tie a knot, and once I have that, I'm just gonna tie the extra, or cut off the extra, and I'm done. So this is my final sketchbook. This is how the spine looks like. And you'll notice that your pages lay nicely flat. So I hope you've enjoyed this little DIY. I know that this can sometimes be tricky to do, but you can always start off with the saddle stitch first, and once you get the hang of this, you can move on to something that's a bit more complicated, but it's still easy to get the grasp on it once you try it out. So I hope that you get to try it out by yourself, and I hope you've enjoyed this, and thank you for watching.